exposing. Okay, you guys know my math is incredible. Is that 1.9 billion? Right? I'm assuming. Pharma company, lock me in, chat. We got another Fern video. Y'all know I love the Fern reacts. I ain't gonna lie.
Victoria, Southern Australia. Linda Matthews is watching her husband, Brad, lose control. Fear rises up from the pit of her stomach. She's never seen him like this before. But Brad is hooked on a strong opioid painkiller called tapentadol.
What the fuck?
Marco lives in Berlin, Germany. He's 23 years old. A few years ago, he bought a special printer that lets him create a very specific type of document.
What the fuck?
Prescriptions for a drug called tramadol. Today, he's taking one to a pharmacy for the last time. In Zico's hometown of Lomé, Togo, tramadol is known as the poor man's cocaine. He pops one and hops in his moto taxi to start his shift. An invisible thread runs through these people's stories. It leads back to an industrial town in Germany near the Dutch border, Stolberg. One of the world's leading painkiller manufacturers is based here. It's called Grunenthal. And the global pharma giant has a controversial past. One of Grunenthal's key products is the opioid tramadol. Some experts warn that it's too loosely regulated, that it seems to be acting as a gateway drug. Meanwhile, in European countries like Germany, concern is growing over young people misusing prescription meds. Some experts see signs of an emerging opioid crisis. In parts of Africa, tramadol has already fueled a crisis of its own. And a little over a decade ago, Grunenthal started pushing a new and even stronger opioid onto the global market, tapentadol.
Oh shit.
Doctors have allegedly been actively encouraged to prescribe it.
What?
Potential risks may have been downplayed, and regulatory oversight may have fallen short. Some have compared Grunenthal's methods to those of an American pharmaceutical company, Purdue Pharma, and their opioid
Oxycontin.
Oh shit. I heard about
Are we looking at a
Oxycontin.
new opioid crisis? One made in Germany?
What the fuck, bro? I ain't gonna lie, chat. I might be a weird nigga, bro, but I low-key like love this kind of shit. Like drugs and I don't know, bro. It's just so like fascinating to me, bro.
Together, we strive to make it possible.
Tramadol is highly abused in many African countries.
A world free of pain.
De tous vont prendre ça. C'est le truc même qui va te contrôler. Et ça va te créer des problèmes.
You might think here are the clean guys and here are the bad guys, but it's just a different way of influencing.
Da merkt man einfach wieder mal, dass die Pharmaindustrie, da geht's rein um Geld.
The head of the working group was actually a professor whose whole professorship was sponsored.
A través del tratamiento de una novedosa molécula que se llama tapentadol.
All opioids have the potential to get people dependent.
Unsere Söhne sollen nicht umsonst gestorben sein. Das ist es.
What the fuck?
We've come to Vienna to continue to sound the alarm. To sound the alarm around the dangers of synthetic drugs.
It's the 67th session of the CND, the United Nations Commission on Narcotic Drugs. For just over a week, delegates, member state representatives, NGOs, and experts gather in Vienna to discuss global drug policy.
Agencies, Health and Human Services, Homeland Security, Justice, drug policy, drug enforcement. Everyone is here.
Among them is Maria Christoph, an investigative journalist. She worked with reporters from 10 countries on a large-scale investigation into opioid abuse, led by the Examination. The team first looked at American company Purdue Pharma.
It's considered to be one reason for the opioid crisis over there.
Oxycontin killed more than 450,000 Americans.
Holy
Purdue's
fuck.
flagship product was the opioid painkiller Oxycontin, which was intended to treat severe pain. The company claimed that the drug...
I swear they still prescribe Oxycontin in places. Like, I swear I've heard, like, people around me say that shit.
...wasn't addictive, that it was unlikely to cause withdrawal symptoms, and that it had low abuse potential.
Cat.
And from the late 90s onward, Oxycontin was widely prescribed for all kinds of pain, from chronic conditions to minor back pain, and even toothaches.
What?
Purdue's claims turned out to be false, and millions of patients got addicted to opioids. Consequently, over the last 24 years, more than 800,000 people have died from overdoses of opioids, both legal and otherwise.
Bro, that's a whole city. Like, take that in.
The U.S. opioid crisis is still raging today. Every year, tens of thousands still die from synthetic street opioids like fentanyl.
Bro.
But at the UN conference, Maria keeps hearing the same thing. Purdue and OxyContin are old news. Instead, people at the CND toss around other names, tramadol and tapentadol. Maria's intrigued. Both products were originally developed by a German firm, Grünenthal. Like Purdue Pharma, Grünenthal is a family business. And from what Maria hears, that's not all they have in common.
What some experts actually told us is, you might think here are the clean guys, Grünenthal, and here are the bad guys, Purdue Pharma. But it's just a different way of working, of influencing. In some way, it's a similar playbook, even though it's not as straightforward.
Bradley Fort lives in Victoria, Australia with his wife Linda Matthews. From 2016 to 2018, he was addicted to oxycodone, a semi-synthetic opioid painkiller. For the past year, he's managed to stay off opioids. But now he's suffering from chronic headaches. His doctor prescribes a new opioid, Palexia. That's Grünenthal's tapentadol-based painkiller. Here in Australia, it's licensed to and sold by another company. The packaging warns that Brad might face a higher risk of addiction due to his history with prescription drugs. But he trusts his doctor. Linda, on the other hand, is worried.
Bro, I ain't gonna lie. Like, if your doctor knows you, like, have a history being addicted to drugs and shit, bro, and that nigga prescribes you opioids, bro, that's a fucking... I feel like that's a shit doctor, bro.
A year later, Linda gives birth to triplets. Brad is still taking tapentadol, and the pills leave him drowsy, barely able to help with the kids. And whenever he goes into withdrawal, this otherwise peaceful man becomes irritable and aggressive.
Bro.
Today, things have gone completely...
I ain't gonna lie, that's a shit doctor, bro. You addicted to drugs and a nigga prescribes you opioids, bro. That doctor should know better.
Bro.
This nigga gonna start abusing his wife. Oh, shit.
When he misses the triplets' first Christmas,
you my hero. You my favorite content creator. I'm gonna tell my kids about... Now, fact, Con, I'm gonna tell my kids about you too, gang.
Brad needs to move out.
I'm gonna tell my kids about you too.
5 months later, he's found dead. The cause is an overdose of tapentadol and oxycodone.
Yeah, I knew it. Bitch ass nigga got addicted.
Opioids work differently than the painkillers many of us have at home. Drugs like ibuprofen, aspirin, and paracetamol can help relieve a headache or ease your pain. Opioids do that too, but they can also prompt your body to release endorphins.
Yeah.
These are chemical messengers produced by the body itself. They reduce the perception of pain and increase feelings of well-being.
Yeah.
Our bodies release them when we laugh, exercise, or have sex. They also influence our body temperature, hormone levels.
I ain't gonna lie, I love that feeling of endorphin, bro. I love that shit. Well, I'm gonna be a superstar, so they'll know me. Yeah, facts, me too. I mean, your youths are probably already gonna know who I am, but it's like awesome shit where you could be like, damn, like I really talked to this nigga before. You feel me? So it'll be like a different perspective.
Natural pain relievers. Imagine you fall off your bike and hurt your knee. In response, your body releases endorphins. They attach themselves to opioid receptors located along pain-processing nerve pathways in the brain and spinal cord. By doing so, they inhibit the transmission of pain signals to the brain. So while the injury's still there, the pain becomes bearable.
It's also some adrenaline.
For many types of injury, the body simply can't produce enough natural pain relievers. But thousands of years ago, humans discovered a natural substance that attaches to the very same pain receptors.
Yeah.
Opium.
Yeah. This is in Afghanistan, bro.
Your competitors don't
I know this shit.
Part 2.
We read about chat. I think we saw something about this
you find out
recently, or not recently, maybe a few months ago.
The word opium comes from Greek. It means juice, referencing the milky sap of the poppy, which the drug is extracted from.
Yes, bro.
Some sources say the Greek physician Hippocrates mentioned it as early as 400 BC. Others indicate that opium was used for medical purposes much earlier, in ancient Egypt. Centuries later, opium became deeply embedded in Roman medicine. In some parts of the empire, there were hundreds of opium pharmacies. Several Roman emperors appear to have been addicted to the stuff. A little later, Chinese surgeons also used opium, primarily as an anesthetic. The earliest known evidence of opium use was found in the Levant region. These ceramic vessels were probably used to store opium poppies. Roughly 3,400 years later, in the German town of Paderborn, a pharmacist named Friedrich
this shit is so cool to me, bro.
Experimenting with opium poppies. Eventually, Zehetana isolates a substance that can be dosed far more precisely than raw opium juice, morphium. Today, it's called morphine.
Oh shit! That's how
it lays the foundation for modern pain therapy.
Yeah.
Morphine is an opiate because it's derived directly from the latex of the opium poppy. whereas the term opioid refers to all substances that act on opioid receptors, including partially or fully synthetic drugs. To this day, morphine remains the benchmark used to measure how effectively other opioids suppress pain. Tramadol and Tilidine are only 10 to 17% as potent. Purdue's OxyContin is roughly twice as effective as morphine.
Holy fuck.
And fentanyl is 70 to 100 times stronger.
Fuck.
That's why it's so dangerous. One of the strongest opioids currently approved for medical use on humans is sufentanil. It's up to 1,000 times more potent than morphine.
What the fuck?
By the late 19th century, Germany is a leading center for chemical and pharmaceutical innovation. Manufacturers like Stada and Bayer lead the way. At the time, many people in Europe and the US are addicted to morphine. In 1898, Bayer launches one of the first commercially available opioids. Bayer claims it's less addictive than morphine and much safer. It's marketed as a harmless analgesic for pains and coughs, and in Germany, it's sold over the counter. The new drug is such a hit. You may have heard of it today. It's called heroin.
Yo!
It and other opioids soon become widespread recreational drugs. But as the 20th century rolls on, countless new laws regulate the use of opioids. Many of the drugs are now available only in hospitals and pharmacies. And there's a good reason for this. People who become addicted to opioids eventually build up a tolerance. So to keep feeling the same effects, they need to up their dose or consume stronger opioids, which leads to a higher risk of overdose. When someone ODs, their breathing can slow dramatically, making the supply of oxygen to the brain insufficient. This can lead to unconsciousness, coma, or even cardiac arrest, which often causes permanent brain damage. Mixing opioids with alcohol or other drugs further increases the risk.
I'll cook you.
The worst-case scenario is sudden death.
Yeah.
For many big pharmaceutical companies, the past few decades have been a roller coaster. For years, Purdue Pharma pushed its opioids through aggressive marketing and lobbying. In 2020, the company agreed to a settlement potentially worth $8.3 billion for its role in fueling America's opioid crisis. The year before, the company had already filed for bankruptcy. Since then, many pharmaceutical companies have come to consider the opioid business too risky. In 2021, pharma giant Johnson & Johnson stopped selling opioids in the US entirely. And as part of bankruptcy proceedings in 2024, Endo Health Solutions agreed to drastically scale back its marketing and selling of opioids. The withdrawal of Purdue Pharma and other big pharmaceutical companies left a vacuum, and that may have benefited the companies that continued betting on opioids. One of these players is Grunenthal.
Yeah.
Together, we strive to make it possible. Our vision, a world free of pain.
Compared to most German pharmaceutical giants, Grunenthal is still a relatively young company, but it has a remarkably controversial history. Germany, 1946, a year after the end of World War II. In the court of Nuremberg, high-ranking Nazis are
I didn't know that like opioids and like morphine and shit like that was like came from natural substances, bro. I ain't gonna lie. I thought it was like all man-made shit.
For their horrible crimes. Outside, the country is in
you gotta
ruins.
stop doing drugs.
People
King.
clear rubble with their bare hands.
I don't
Many
fucking
are
do
physically
drugs.
and emotionally scarred.
Right.
In West Germany, the entrepreneurial Wirtz family believes it knows what the broken country needs now: medicine. So far, the family business has mainly produced detergent. But in 1946, they found Chemie Grunenthal GmbH. It becomes the first company to bring penicillin to the German market. The young pharmaceutical firm recruits
I ain't gonna lie, I just hit a workout before this. My arms are killing me. If y'all see me like resting my arms on my desk and shit, my arms are so fucking tired,
scientists. Dr. Heinrich Möchte becomes the new head of research. He's accused of conducting brutal and even lethal experiments on concentration camp prisoners during the Nazi era.
What the
But after the war, he apparently avoided being tried in Poland by fleeing west. He was never formally convicted. Heinz Baumkutter was a physician at Sachsenhausen concentration camp. He's believed to have conducted experiments on prisoners, including children. He was accused of injecting inmates with hepatitis pathogens and burning their skin with phosphorus.
What the
After the
fuck
war,
is
he was
wrong with
sentenced
this
to 8
nigga?
years in prison. But he had already spent time...
Yo, this nigga's name is Heinz, like the ketchup company. See, this is why I don't fucking eat ketchup, nigga. That shit is ass.
in pretrial detention and in a Soviet prison, so he's released early and ends up working for Grunenthal. But the company's most famous ex-Nazi is probably Otto Ambros, a chemical weapons expert widely thought to have been one of the leaders of the Monowitz concentration camp. After the war, he was sentenced to 8 years in prison. but 3 years later, he was released early for good behavior and appointed to the boards of several companies. In 1972, he became an advisor to Grunenthal. Reports suggest that after the war, the company employed at least 5 high-ranking former Nazis.
What the fuck?
Grunenthal confirms that it employed researchers who had held positions of power within the Nazi Party, but it claims this was common practice in Germany during the post-war years. Today, Grunenthal strongly condemns the Nazis' crimes and says it's committed to a free, diverse, and tolerant society.
Bro, what the fuck? I ain't gonna lie.
Explain to me how you can join a
Yo, the
free
history of this shit
community
is
with
crazy.
17,000
I ain't gonna
members
lie.
and not learn something that will
This is why I
improve
look, bro. This nigga's
Because
one of my
right now,
favorite like
you can
YouTubers to
join
watch,
this
bro.
100%
I dead ass.
free,
I
and now
would
they
watch
get
his shit
access to 17,000
off stream too. I swear to God. This shit is
In
so
the early
interesting.
1960s, the family business ends up making global headlines. Not for the war criminals working in its labs, but for what is still widely considered the biggest pharmaceutical scandal in European history. In 1957, Grunenthal introduces Contergan, a tranquilizer and sleeping pill. Active ingredient, thalidomide.
Oh shit.
Doctors explicitly prescribe it to pregnant women, and many take it for morning sickness or as a sleep aid. The medication is sold under different names in nearly 50 countries. But then babies begin to be born with severe birth defects, including stunted or missing limbs.
What the fuck?
Today, we know this was caused by thalidomide interfering with fetal development during the early stages of pregnancy. Around 12,000 of these thalidomide babies were documented. At least a third died before their first birthday. The most common causes of death were bowel, cardiac, or renal failure. After 4 years on the market, Contergan is withdrawn. To this day, many of the survivors struggle with severe disabilities. In 2021, the Wirtz family publicly apologizes to those affected. The thalidomide tragedy is part of their corporate history, and they deeply regret the far-reaching consequences. The company told us it has a special moral responsibility in relation to the tragedy. It emphasized that its foundation, which funds projects that contribute to more independent lives for those affected, is an effort to support these individuals and their families. Back in the 1970s, the scandal almost completely ruined the young company's reputation. People around the world associated it with the thalidomide
Are these niggas
disaster.
still in business?
But in 1977, Grunenthal introduced a new drug to the German market, Tramol, with the active substance tramadol. It was the result of at least 15 years of research. Chemist Kurt Flick first synthesized it back in 1962. According to documents from the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, Grunenthal applied for a patent just a few years later. Developing a new drug takes resources, including huge amounts of time and money. Many compounds are abandoned long before market approval. Some never make it out of the research phase. That makes patent protection extremely important. Only the patent holder can profit from distributing a drug's active ingredient. That allows them to recoup the massive investment R&D requires. And according to Grunenthal, after its launch in 1977, tramadol became one of the world's most frequently prescribed analgesics. At the time, it's considered a weak opioid. Today, we know that simply wasn't true.
Damn.
Ja, hallo, ich bin Tanja Nicole Albuscheid. Mein Sohn ist vor 3,5 Jahren an einer Überdosierung Tramadol gestorben.
Fuck.
It's 2019. Marco is 20 years old. He likes going for walks in the woods and hanging out with his friends.
Yeah.
Now and then he smokes weed.
Okay.
And he's just started experimenting with something new. The stronger the medication, the harder it is to get. In Germany, you can buy nasal sprays or throat lozenges in drugstores or supermarkets. But prescription drugs are only available at pharmacies. Marco somehow gets a hold of blank prescription forms, and he buys himself a new printer. With it, he starts doing something usually reserved for medical staff. Printing prescriptions for meds.
Yeah.
Like the anesthetic ketamine and the analgesic tramadol.
Nigga said ketamine,
We won't
bro.
explain exactly how. We also strongly advise against taking medication without medical supervision or a real prescription. Marco's forged prescription is ready. He just needs to take it to a pharmacy. May 2022. Marco's been taking tramadol regularly for 3 years now.
But don't you need to put it under, like, I don't know how this shit works in Germany, but I swear with a prescription, it's like, you have to put, like, the doctor's name and shit, like, with their signature and whoever, like, whoever, like, the doctor would prescribe you the drug. So how the fuck
He's
is he,
addicted to
like,
it.
what doctor is he putting
His
on there?
grandmother watches him enter his apartment. He doesn't seem well. His mother texts him, but her messages only get a single check mark. This happens frequently, so she doesn't think much about it. Maybe he's on something again and wants to be left alone. But 3 days pass without a word, so she drives to his apartment. She rings the doorbell over and over, but her son doesn't answer. So she calls the police. According to her, even after she tells them about Marco's history with alcohol and prescription drugs, they refuse to force the door open.
What the fuck?
After another 3 days
I would have
pass,
broken that door.
the
That's
police
my youth
return.
in there.
By this time, a foul smell is coming from the apartment.
Das war der 3.6., wo mir das dann, ja.
Marco was just 23 years old.
Damn.
According to the autopsy report, he may have developed a tolerance to tramadol. There's enough of the drug in his blood to cause a coma or death. There's also alcohol, small amounts of paracetamol, and traces of the antipsychotic medication promethazine.
What the fuck?
All these findings point to a
Promethazine is antipsychotic?
combined drug intoxication with
I thought
tramadol.
promethazine was like lean.
Unfortunately, Marco's story is far from unique. Society often debates the abuse of traditional drugs like alcohol, cocaine, amphetamines, and weed. But despite being a long-standing problem, the abuse of prescription medication is often overlooked. Depending on the source, between 1.5 and 2 million people in Germany are addicted to prescription drugs.
What the
That's
fuck?
about as many as are addicted to alcohol,
That's
possibly
crazy.
more. In the US, 7.6 million people are addicted to prescription drugs.
Damn, bro, that's all of New York, pretty much. That's almost all of New York. That's like 2 LAs.
And teenagers and young adults in particular are experimenting with them more and more often.
Bro,
Many
that's
young
insane.
users don't know how dangerous these substances can be. Maria Christoph tells us tramadol and tilidine are increasingly becoming gateway drugs. In 2023, 8 out of every 100 drug-related deaths in Germany involved opioid painkillers. Among 14 to 20-year-olds, it was 1 in 3. In England and Wales, among 14 to 20-year-olds, it was 1 in 3.
That's crazy.
In England
as
and
fuck.
Wales, opiates were even involved in a staggering 47% of all drug poisoning deaths. And the 2025 UN World Drug Report shows that opioids are by far the most involved substances in all drug-related mortality cases.
Damn.
The data were provided by 66 countries around the world. Apparently, prescription opioids are relatively easy to come by. Some order them via Telegram chats or darknet groups. Others simply snatch them from their grandparents' medicine cabinets. Some, like Marco, find ways to forge their own prescriptions. If opioids like tapentadol and tramadol are so dangerous, then why aren't they more strictly regulated? Time to look more closely at how big pharma companies operate.
Yeah.
Guys, if you're still
I ain't gonna
balding
lie.
in 2026,
I mean, yo, we
what
know.
are you doing?
I mean, we
There's an
already
easy
know.
solution.
We already know, like, yo, big
Medical-
big pharma companies, like, they're just breaded up. Like, they do everything for the bread.
Opioids
Them
are
niggas
still
don't actually
urgently
care about
needed.
people, bro.
Every day, hospitals around the world rely on them, especially for the treatment of severe pain and diseases like cancer. This tremendous need supports a global pharmaceutical industry, and Grunenthal has long been a major player in it. Since tramadol's patent expired in the late 90s, countless manufacturers have been flooding the market with generic versions. A generic drug has the same active ingredient as its brand name counterpart, and it works the exact same way too, even if the name is different.
Yeah.
With increased competition, prices dropped.
Tapentadol is the new best-selling drug that came after tramadol became a generic.
In 2010, Grunenthal introduces its new flagship drug in Germany. In the US, the FDA has already approved tapentadol back in 2008. Today, tramadol and tapentadol-based painkillers rank among the most prescribed opioids in many parts of the world.
It's crazy.
And Grunenthal seems willing to go to great lengths to protect its original brand name products. To understand how, we have to start in their home market, Germany. Before that, though, a crucial skill in this story is knowing how to interpret data. If you don't know how, it's a valuable skill to have. Learning's changing rapidly.
This is
and
an
these
ad?
days, we're better at understanding through it. Changes that learn you the all /firm. The Federal
L-ad, they ain't paying me.
Research leads us to Germany's medical regulatory agency, the Federal Institute for Drugs and Medical Devices. Among other things, it's responsible for classifying medications as narcotics. The special subdivision, the Federal Opium Agency, regulates access to opioids like tramadol. We emailed them to ask the head of the agency for an interview. They replied just a few hours later. Thank you for your inquiry. Unfortunately, due to limited resources, we are unable to offer you an interview. This was still
Damn.
several months before production for this video began, so we gave them a call and ended up speaking to the Institute's press officer. We introduced ourselves and requested a short call with the head of the Opium Agency. It's a hard no. We talk for 15 minutes, but the answer remains the same. Questions will only be answered in writing. Maria Christoph and her colleagues at the examination point us towards suspicious events in 2010 that might explain their silence.
Oh shit. They had
May
something.
2010. Tramadol has been in the international market for about 30 years. Its patent expired a long time ago, so many manufacturers now produce it as a generic drug. The Federal Institute for Drugs and Medical Devices has its headquarters here, Bonn, the former capital of West Germany. The Institute's expert committee on narcotics is meeting today. On the agenda is tramadol. The committee plans to regulate it more strictly. If they classify it as a narcotic, doctors will need a special tamper-proof form to prescribe it, a form that's much harder for people like Marco to fake.
Yeah.
But the committee postpones any decisions. Then Grunenthal steps in. It sends a letter to the head of the Federal Opium Agency. It says it was surprised to see tramadol on the agenda, and it strongly advises against more restrictive measures. Regulating the drug more tightly in Germany could send the rest of the world a fatal signal. The committee decides to take a closer look.
Yeah, because they know if they put more regulations, a lot of niggas aren't going to be able to buy that shit. So guess what? Their profit goes down. So guess what? They make less money. So guess what? They get cheesed because all they're after is money.
These 12 members form a dedicated working group. Its job is to look at scientific studies and data to evaluate factors like side effects and the drug's potential addictiveness. Eventually, it'll make a recommendation on whether or not tramadol should be more strictly regulated. Looking at the list of names in the working group, Maria Christoph can hardly believe her eyes.
So we looked at the names of the people who were part of this working group, and what we found is that a big amount of people were actually quite close to the company. Which was most surprising to me actually was that the head of the working group on tramadol was actually a professor whose whole professorship was sponsored by the company Grünenthal. And still, they all told us that there were no conflicts of interest with regards to deciding whether tramadol should be more restricted or not.
It's like politics, bro. It's all cap.
In December 2011, the committee presents its final report. It does not recommend regulating tramadol more strictly. It does acknowledge the opioid's general abuse potential, but it sees no indication of an elevated risk of misuse or addiction. It's even described as less potentially addictive than stronger opioids. The committee unanimously decides that the drug will remain available without a special narcotic prescription. Many journalists, experts, and even politicians see a potential conflict of interest. They question whether people with such close ties to Grünenthal could really form unbiased opinions on how to handle one of the company's most relevant products. 15 years later, there are still doubts about this assessment. Maria Christoph says she and her colleagues talked to experts and looked at more recent studies. These all clearly point to tramadol carrying an elevated risk of addiction. Many users struggling with dependence told them they were hooked almost immediately. The Federal Institute for Drugs and Medical Devices seems to disagree. It tells us it sees no evidence suggesting tramadol's potential for abuse was underestimated. It also claims it wasn't informed of any conflicts of interest that would have disqualified members from joining the working group. Many countries have much tougher rules. The UK, for example, classified tramadol as a Schedule III controlled drug back in 2014. Since then, it's been subject to tighter regulation on prescription, storage, and documentation. France also considers tramadol a high-risk opioid due to its potential for abuse, dependence, and overdose. Canada, the US, and Sweden also tightly regulate tramadol.
Yeah, the Germans, so the ministry that is in charge of overlooking tramadol and other opioids, actually says we cannot do this in Germany because this is the country where this drug comes from. If we restrict it even more than in other countries, they would have to do the same and follow our lead.
So Grünenthal may have influenced government decisions that could have negatively affected its product. But what's the company doing beyond its home market? How is tramadol's presumably safer successor, tapentadol, being pushed worldwide?
Bring your agent into Monday.com.
Man, this shit is crazy, low-key.
Your Claude, ChatGPT, and Copilot agents work.
Over the years, Grünenthal has increasingly focused on expanding its business in Latin America. Maria Christoph and her colleagues investigated how the company promotes its best-selling painkillers there.
So we also found in our investigation, especially our colleagues in Latin America found that there's a big influence on medical associations and on patient organizations. So the company is actually spending a lot of money, donating a lot of money to these organizations that then again have an influence on governments in certain regions, but also on the way how doctors prescribe this drug.
In many areas around the world, advertising prescription drugs directly to customers is heavily restricted or outright banned, including in parts of Latin America. So the marketing of opioid medications is often aimed exclusively at doctors and pharmacists, that is, at the people who decide whether these drugs get prescribed, and not directly at patients. Maria Christoph and her colleagues found that Grunenthal appears to be following a softer version of the Purdue playbook.
So what Purdue did was very straightforward. They told doctors, okay, our opioid doesn't get people addicted. And there's also another way to do this by sponsoring scientific research, by giving money to patient organizations. So doing it a bit smoother and less obvious, probably, but having a similar influence.
Many pharmaceutical companies fund medical organizations and patient groups. These organizations often represent patients in public health debates and help shape healthcare policy. The examination found that over the last decade, Grunenthal paid more than $9 million to at least 900 European patient groups. It reportedly supported similar groups in Latin America, too. In its response to us, Grunenthal claims these payments were for clearly defined services, and that the company never expected them to influence how doctors prescribe medication. But the journalists at the examination uncovered several controversial methods. In Mexico, a pain association funded by Grunenthal reportedly lobbied Congress to loosen regulations around prescribing tapentadol. In its statement to us, the company claims it never financially supported anyone with the goal of weakening prescription rules. In Peru, the head of a similar pain association reportedly promoted tapentadol as less addictive than traditional opioids to a room full of doctors at a pain conference. He allegedly told them the drug could be a source of profit. Grunenthal says it only learned about the incident through journalists. The company admits to sponsoring the conference, but not the lecture or the speaker in question.
Hold on, are we lagging? Oh, no, we good. What the fuck? Why did my screen just...
The examination also found these Spanish-language training platforms. Both were created by Grunenthal and cater to healthcare professionals like doctors in at least 10 countries. On one, the journalists found this training video.
El día de hoy hablaremos sobre una cápsula muy interesante que compete a todos nosotros, tanto profesionales de la salud como el público en general, y este es el dolor, a través del tratamiento de una novedosa molécula que se llama tapentadol.
The speaker in the video is Silvia Allende Perez, the head of a public pain clinic in Mexico. She doesn't mention that she's also a former Grunenthal employee.
So on the educational website of Grunenthal in Mexico, we found that a doctor was actually promoting the drug tapentadol as less addictive and as a better drug in comparison to other drugs.
In her presentation, Perez promotes tapentadol and its advantages over other opioids. One of the Grunenthal-branded slides claims the drug's potential for abuse is minimal. The slide also downplays the risk of the drug causing respiratory depression, that is, breathing slowing down to the point of being life-threatening. It claims there were no reports of respiratory depression. But a 2017 study on tapentadol's post-market development concludes that it's actually a major clinical concern with this type of analgesics. The package information also lists respiratory depression as a known side effect. And yet, in 2024, this training video claiming the contrary remained accessible on a platform created by Grunenthal.
So we confronted the company with this video, and actually they took it offline because they said that you're right, this material is not what our scientific research and what our knowledge at the moment is supporting, and this is why they took off this material.
Grunenthal's response to us also acknowledges that some of the slide's claims were incorrect. It says it takes incidents like this seriously and has therefore reviewed all remaining content on the training platform. Grunenthal also commissioned additional studies on tapentadol. It's relatively common in the pharmaceutical industry for companies to fund studies on their own drugs. Before a study or article is published in medical journals, it's usually subject to peer review, meaning independent experts review it anonymously. This process is meant to ensure quality and credibility, and physicians and pharmacists often rely heavily on these publications. But even peer-reviewed publications don't automatically guarantee full independence. Take this article on tapentadol published in the journal CNS Drugs in 2014. At the time, the authors were all Grunenthal employees.
Wow.
The paper claims that the reduced dependence seen with tapentadol might be due to the fact that the drug acts on two separate bodily systems that affect pain. Maria Christoph tells us she and her colleagues showed these studies and articles to experts. Each said they couldn't find any evidence to support these claims. Yet other scientific publications have cited them, which appears to provide additional validation. According to the examination, Grunenthal relied on these studies' results to train its sales representatives to promote the drug. In the United States, Grunenthal initially licensed the marketing rights for tapentadol to Johnson & Johnson. In 2012, J&J was already collaborating with researchers to examine whether the drug's dual mechanism might reduce its risk of causing addiction. In an email to a colleague, one of these researchers wrote, "I don't know of any evidence to support that, but I can live with the people at J&J believing this to be true." To which their colleague replied, "I don't completely get it either." Grunenthal declined to comment on this email exchange.
What?
However, the company admits there isn't sufficient evidence to support the claim that tapentadol's dual mechanism reduces its abuse potential. It claims it repeatedly pointed out that the drug's abuse potential is similar to those of other strong opioids. Still, Grunenthal apparently managed to present its new product as a good opioid, or at least as a better one.
I'm lowering my ask
Bro, I don't know
to
why
just
my
$1
fucking
today, and here's why.
Okay,
this
my shit
Senate
chat.
race in Texas
I couldn't fucking see
is
chat
likely
for a
going to
minute,
be
bro.
the most expensive and the most
So we have on the
fault,
one
yeah.
hand the strong opioid, the dangerous drug, oxycodone, that is the reason why a lot of people got addicted from opioids in the United
There we
States.
go.
And on the other hand, we have tapentadol, a drug that actually works quite similar to oxycodone, but is considered a weaker opioid, or at least this is what is in a lot of people's minds. It's a more clean drug, it's less addictive, but this
Yo, what's going on? Vintage 66D7. What's going on, bro? My fault. I couldn't see the chat for a second. The shit was loading back in.
That it's actually not
going
the
on,
scientific
though, bro?
research we conducted that is supporting this argument that this drug is less addictive than this drug.
Grunenthal tells us they're
Bro, I'm not used to reading YouTube, having a YouTube chat open too, bro. This is crazy. Okay.
materials are based exclusively on data from peer-reviewed medical journals, and that whenever that data allowed for comparison to other products, the findings were cited accordingly. But in many countries, Grunenthal's tapentadol has already overtaken generic versions of oxycodone. In Mexico, prescriptions for oxycodone dropped sharply after 2020, while those for tapentadol have increased massively. According to the data collected by the examination, Peru has been spending more and more public money on tapentadol since 2019, significantly more than it did on oxycodone during the entire previous decade.
Damn.
These developments don't automatically mean abuse is rising too. They could even mean that more patients are finally getting access to much-needed pain medication. So far, there's no evidence of widespread, unregulated opioid prescription in Latin America. But what's happened in the United States shows just how quickly markets can shift. Aggressive marketing, downplayed risks, and rising prescription numbers can trigger developments that are extremely difficult to contain down the stretch. Grunenthal argues that strict regulation of their opioids, specifically in Germany, could send a negative signal to other countries, especially to regions already struggling with limited access to opioid painkillers.
Yeah.
So let's look at these regions. In some parts of India, reports of tapentadol abuse have been piling up for years. These drugs aren't typically produced by Grunenthal. They're generic versions from local manufacturers. They're often illegally combined with muscle relaxants.
What the fuck?
During the 2010s, tapentadol appears to have been available in India without the need for a prescription. It wasn't until 2021 that India's health ministry began responding to growing abuse of the drug. But the most devastating consequences can be seen in Africa.
Damn.
Parts of the continent have been dealing with a severe opioid crisis for years now.
Tramadol is highly abused in many African countries, especially in Western Africa.
What the fuck? Poor man's
This
cocaine.
plant is commonly known as the African peach. In Cameroon, it's used to treat ailments like pain, malaria, and fever. A team of Cameroonian and French researchers wants to find out what exactly gives this plant its supposedly analgesic properties. They end up finding an active ingredient in the root bark. When they analyze it, they can't believe their eyes. In medicine, this exact structure is known as tramadol.
Oh,
The compound they've just found in the plant is chemically identical to the opioid Grunenthal developed in a lab decades ago. Up until now, tramadol has been considered a fully synthetic, man-made drug. Can this really be true? To make sure, the researchers examined plants from 3 different places in Cameroon, collected during different seasons. They find tramadol in every single sample. By now, they've ruled out accidental contamination. They're sure the substance must be of natural origin. Their discovery makes headlines around the world. Now they want to understand how exactly the plant is able to biologically synthesize tramadol, but they'll never get the chance. A year later, this study is published. 4 other researchers debunked the allegedly groundbreaking find. The tramadol found in the African peach clearly doesn't have a natural origin. It's man-made. The team also finds the synthetic opioid in other plants, in soil samples, and inside well water. Some of the water samples reveal alarmingly high concentrations. Tramadol has made its way into the groundwater. Cameroon isn't the only African country affected. Many people in Togo, Nigeria, Ghana, and Egypt have also become dependent on tramadol.
Not Egypt.
According to the United Nations, non-medical use of tramadol has been a growing problem on the continent since at least 2013. Some African countries are facing full-blown opioid crises. Zico works as a moto taxi driver in Lomé, the capital of Togo.
Quand il y a embouteillage, c'est nous. On faufile dans les voitures et vite, on va te déposer. Je travaille 12 heures de temps. Ce que je commence à 6 heures du matin, ça fatigue trop.
He describes his experience in this fantastic documentary. He came to the city to make money. He and his colleagues live on the street, and they're addicted to tramadol.
Nous tous, on prend ça. Si tu as pris ta dose, ça va te faire du bien, tu vas bien travailler. Mais si tu as abusé, c'est le truc même qui va te contrôler. Et ça va te créer des problèmes.
Zico uses tramadol to get through his 12-hour shifts and the rest of the day. He takes about 2 pills a day. But the tramadol he consumes doesn't come from Grunenthal. The company tells us it doesn't distribute tramadol in West Africa. Instead, the market is flooded with cheap generic versions illegally trafficked from China and India. And counterfeits, which often contain higher or lower doses than their packages suggest. Some contain no tramadol at all.
Placebo effect.
Just you.
Nigga ain't eating shit.
On base 44.
Zico doesn't need an expensive printer to get his pills. Tramadol is everywhere. Users can buy it in pharmacies, at roadside stalls, or on the black market. As the original developer of tramadol, Grunenthal may be morally responsible for what's happening in these African countries, but only indirectly. At the same time, the company has obviously been lobbying against stricter regulation.
I mean, okay, that's kind of... You could say, like, yo, like, should they be, like, it's, like, morally their fault or whatever that, you know, it's being abused in other countries because, like, they're the ones that created it. But that's like saying, that's like you starting an alcohol company and then niggas in Australia are addicted to, like, off-brand versions of your alcohol. So now it's your fault. You know what I'm saying? I just feel like, I don't know, bro. Like, I don't...
Especially in Germany.
Maybe that wasn't a good analogy.
That the regulation would send a fatal
that might have actually
signal
been
to the
very
rest
dumb.
of the
I don't
world.
know.
That doesn't sound coherent to us.
But this is the argument that also the company was spreading. So in my opinion, and what experts told us, this has no direct connection. You care about the people in Germany, and you have to take care that people don't get addicted. In African countries, there's other regulations and there's other possibility to have a safe environment. But this is what they say and what they put in the mind of people.
Maybe Grunenthal was worried that regulating the product more strictly in its original market could send an entirely different signal, namely that the drug is more harmful than the company's been marketing it as for decades.
I think with having this in mind, it's hard to take all of the responsibility away from the company because, it happened that people thought this is less addictive, but in the end it's the same opioid as other opioids, and all opioids have the potential to get people dependent.
Grunenthal doesn't deny that opioid painkillers like tramadol can be misused and cause addiction. Here's what it does say. It doesn't market tramadol as a drug with low risk of abuse or dependence. Its position on the product's abuse potential was based on scientific data that was always shared with regulators. Tramadol should only ever be used under strict medical supervision and following careful risk-benefit assessments. Regulating its legal medical use ultimately fell within the purview of national governments. The company supports stricter measures if the situation within a certain country requires them. But in several West African countries, tramadol was only regulated more strictly after the drug had already been wreaking havoc for years. Pharma is a trillion-dollar industry. The global pharmaceutical market has been growing for the last 2 decades and is now worth almost $1.7 trillion. That's partly because societies around the world are getting older. To sell their products, some companies still rely on proven methods. But highly addictive drugs like opioids should deliver on their promises from the very beginning. From addiction and social decay to lethal overdoses, many substances that can save lives also have the potential to destroy them. Pharmaceutical companies are at least partly responsible for how openly, honestly, and adequately societies handle the risks tied to their drugs. But where does their responsibility end? With patients who believe they won't become addicted to a certain opioid? With countries where the active ingredient they developed is spiraling out of control? Or with young people who experiment with drugs and suddenly find themselves heavily addicted because they can easily get the pills and underestimate the risks? Grunenthal tells us it's committed to the responsible use of opioid painkillers. Their targeted effects remain essential for patients suffering from severe pain, like cancer patients and people recovering from major surgery or serious injury. The company says that opioids are the last option available to many people's doctors. At the same time, it says it no longer plans to research and develop new opioid drugs. In 2024, sales of Palexia and Tramol accounted for a low double-digit percentage of Grunenthal's total revenue. And the company expects that share to continue shrinking in the years ahead. Strong medications have always been abused, from morphine and heroin all the way to fentanyl. That's precisely why governments and regulatory agencies carry so much responsibility. You need to recognize dangerous developments early on, respond quickly, and regulate accordingly. Decisions about medications must remain independent. They should always serve the interests of patients, not the interests of pharmaceutical corporations.
Facts.
Of course, we were always thinking, has this company learned from its dark past? And I would say, on the one hand, yes, they definitely tried to change something. And they also had a working group that was actually reviewing documents if they are still in line with the latest research. On the other hand, what we found is that all this influence, all this money that actually flows to these organizations and to doctors and to scientific research is another way of influencing and potentially also harming people who get this opioid prescribed, thinking it's less addictive. So this is just probably also another way of having a bad influence. And what I have to say is that the whole image of creating a world without pain is something that is quite misleading, because a world without pain doesn't exist, and especially an opioid is not changing this world where pain actually exists.
A world without pain is impossible, bro. That's impossible, bro. Man, this was a good ass video.